Mending. Tagline: a heart-forward approach. The recommended dirge for the occasion: Stand Tall by Childish Gambino. Clav, like Jav, and Lucky like number 5, says a smoky, smooth voice. As I continue to smell the soil in my hands, I squish it under my feet. As I do so to hear my folks most clearly, I visualize a man in a tan zoot suit with blue pinstripes and a wide-brimmed hat. He drags slow on a fat cigar. When he finally looks at me, I see his eyes create their own sparkle. He talks with his mouth at a slant, like I do. Holding up a handful of rings, he lists off from thumb to pinky: family, unity, honor, trust, and fill in the blank. Mine, he smirks, is heart. As long as you've got your heart, you've got a place to start. He tells me about South Carolina, about how we swamp people. The swamp ain't never left us. That's why we good in the muck. He tells me of how they drowned him in the swamp, the one where the sycamores ain't there no more, right near the tree they hanged my brother. Smile fading and the glint in his eye turning a hazy blue. He said, I don't want you to drown, kid. If you need help getting out of some mud, you call me. Understand? I tell him I do. Them Jezebels you've been read about, he continues, ain't the only ones that made some home out of them willows. A lot of sorrow is there. You filled with sorrow too, you know. Some of it ain't even all yours. You gotta leave that with them sycamores and them willows. Ain't them trees where you see a bunch of us hanging. I know you knows that moss is us. Them hanging flowers too. He pauses and with a smirk and a flourish continues, 'cause some of us refuse to die unpretty. The smile leaves his face, but not his eyes. Talk to us every once in a while when you see us. You never know what kind of story we tell. Right, fellas? More of my line steps forward and talks about us and the trees. Willows and sycamores down one line, elms and oaks down another, redwoods specifically down a third. We real sorrowful people. A lot of our time spent trying to keep them blues at bay. Bookend two of my folks. That's why you so special, Clive says softly, looking at me intently. You won't hide your blues. You won't try to chase them away. You sit with them. You look them straight in their eyes and you tell them what they are and how they not you. You your blues. They louder than you, but you scarier than them. And you let them know that every time you talk, every time you say exactly what you gotta say and do what you gotta do. Every time you call them what they are and you call you what you are. That's that oak that you get from that side. That's that redwood. And that's that slick that you get from the elm on the other side. That's strong, that's slick, that's sharp. Your mind's sharp. So when you face with them willows and them sycamores, them looks at the other side, you know how to see them lessons and them stories without losing your nerves, without losing all of you. He pauses, his eyes sparkling like they're seeing me brand new, or perhaps as I always was. That's powerful, baby. You powerful young blood. We just want you to see it, to know you as well as you know all them other things. You can't lose you. You can't lose your heart. You hear me? I assure him I do. The others leave their parting words and instructions and begin to fade out. Oh, by the way, Clive, signature smile and sparkle back on his face, says, everybody you done lost so far, 'cause I know you was worried about that. They was supposed to go and stay gone for a mighty long time. And you done beat yourself up long enough for it. Find that oak in your spirit, them redwoods, that elm, before you meet us at them willows before you supposed to. There's a lot of people you missing that had you in the mud. He puffs his cigar heartily. And then I just tell you I get you up out the mud. He turns his back and speaks over his shoulder, tracing his cigar through the air like he was writing his final words. Hold your cud, young blood. And just like you be saying, steady my heart so I can do my part. A quiet prayer to myself and my folk, as I know I'm about to engage in something that can send my anxious mind, and thus my hyperactive art, to racing. One where I've been saying on and off for the better part of 3 years now. My heart has always been a point of contention for me. While I named the piece WPW for my book Poems I Wrote for Nobody in Advance, my heart contained an extra electrical pathway that would cause it to accelerate nearly 3 times the normal limit, of whose metaphysical cause I named as either my heart's overcompensation for receiving half loves, or as anticipating having to make up for lost care and affection once I am faced once more with seemingly inevitable abandonment from any and all forms of relation I'm engaged in, which, I admit, can sound deeply melodramatic to the infrequently abandoned and or the abandonment deniers. But as a grand internalizer of the narratives of the world about the ways that my margins made me disposable, and a recipient of the actions of those narratives on micro and macro scale, it is incredibly difficult to not hold that anxiety to your chest, especially as its indoctrination is constant and unrelenting. There is such deep ingrainment that even in moments where it is communicated that I am loved, that I am held, that I am cared for, I am touched before a moment before my mind and my heart work to discard it. That's nice, both say to me and to whomever I'm engaging, but I am unworthy of that. Just give it time. You'll see. You'll leave, physically or emotionally, too. It always happens, and it will be my fault alone. The burdened and the burden. All of these things, all of these are things I carried more steadily than my own heartbeat. Sentiments that still are not always at the forefront of my mind, but lie coiled, waiting as spring at any moment of silence and unease. In confrontation with persons and or circumstances that flare the insecurities I have surrounding these destabilizations, my extra electrical pathway would sound off, physically incapacitating me. A far too on the nose symbol for the ways fear emotionally incapacitated me, too. As much as it was a welcome reminder to slow down, it was also a threat with no outward expression, thus, a threat known only to me. And as a person with trauma surrounding emotional gaslighting on micro and macro scale, and the burdenship of not wanting to quote unquote bother anyone over quote unquote nothing, which I often make synonymous with myself, trying to convince others of the magnitude of a disease, one of many, that has no outward socially recognized symptoms, is not exactly something I have the most comfortable time doing. So rather than saying anything, I would undersell it or refrain from saying anything at all. Partially believe that it won't be taken seriously anyway, partially fear that if it is, it will create a scene or a hassle that could bring me more physical or emotional harm. Partially the resounding beliefs that I am, one, deserving of my pain, two, simply less of a burden if I just make myself scarce, and three, not worth care, help, or treatment. None of which I name to garner sympathy or pity, but to name the functionality of intergenerational, personal, and systemic trauma on the mind frame, using myself as example. And to make additional note that there are those who would not even have to write such a disclaimer, for the pain would not be seen as melodrama. Those who a disclaimer is never expected from. Let us simply consider that disclaimer then, synecdoche for the very phenomena I speak to. All said to say, me and my heart, by choice or by force, have been on the run for a long, long time. And things can only run so hard for so long, garnering so much wear and tear before they fall apart. And I learned this was the most tangibly, my bad. I learned this the most tangibly I have in about 5 years to the date. A late night in mid October, right after the prayer I breathed 1,000 times before. Steady my heart. Love is what makes the heart steady, what makes it fond. And your heart, dear, is very susceptible to knowing where love is and isn't present. A December night where I'm sure I cried in loss, though I have no mental recollection. Somewhere in my body, it remembers. My body now echoes that night's sobs. I remember candlelight and warm water since ran cold. My hands gripping the side of the bathtub, perhaps too tightly. The soft presences sitting on either side of me, insulating me more than the candle's flame. Then the air suspended dewdrops. The amalgamative voices of my mothers. They speak low, slow, and steady as I focus on the breath moving through my body. That little flare you had, begins to blend, was your warning. And we want you to notice who is around you now, that your heart is more sure. There's a slight shift in tone. Someone is becoming leading voice, a prodding voice, one who asks questions and knows you know the answers. But for now, they lay the necessary foundation. Notice those who do not cause you to question, those who do not stoke your fear. how different it feels to be amongst such sureness, how it aligns with what you've wished for, prayed for, been begging for. The questions come. With that in place, why worry or long for what is past, for uncertainty and strife? What answers are there that can't be found, nourished, or soothed here? Is the potential for unanswered question, confusion, intentional misunderstanding, and the like worth the strife to you? The answers come. The voice is more stringent. You are worried and concerned over people who left you for dead and laughed about it, made merriment of your isolation, aimed to showcase that merriment to your face, and still speak around you without the dignity to speak to you. A softening. They do not deserve to occupy your mind as they do. They no longer occupy your heart as they did. An intensity. The fluctuation in tone reminds me of my inhaling and exhaling, of a steady heartbeat. A line of voices sound off. That extra electrical pathway is gone. The heart, even if it tries to send energy that way, still will find nothing. It is barren. There is no more room for excess. You no longer have it in you. The questioning voice comes again. Now, how will you make the space in your heart to hold who remains, including yourself? And how will you work the brain to follow suit? A sits in the tone, not jeering or haughty, but expectant. One that lets me know they will not answer the questions for me this time. I must find the answers myself in due time. Knowing how self destructive I can become when left too tender, too raw, with too many questions or too much time to ponder them, another voice takes lead, soft and careful, but with no uncertainty. If I had to surmise, I'd guess that it is their very softness and care that makes such certainty possible. Do know that we love you, dear. They begin. This is not to be mean. We are not here to hurt you. But we are here to tell you that you've got to stiffen your back a little, that this endless grace thing is over. A unanimous settles in the air. The voice continues. You can be understanding without being yielding or acquiescing. You can hold your realities, their realities, and your own. Theirs does not outweigh or supersede your own, and you've been acting like it does. And you cannot afford to do that anymore. You have been getting better about noticing that and amending, which is good. We are proud of you for that. But you need to keep it up and get stronger in it. As your heart tightens up naturally and comes into its own slower pace, it will come. But you have to foster that too. Shorten that time between your knowing something in the moment and knowing something in hindsight. Trust your knowing in the moment. I lean my head to the left and find more support for its weight than I usually know air to allow. A warmth spreads across the top of my back from my left to my right, a gentle weight settling across my shoulders. The voice feels closer, stronger. You know when something doesn't sit right with you. Say it then. Act on it then. Get in the habit. It is uncomfortable, but it will get easier to do the more you practice it. Not everyone will like you for it, and that's okay. They may tell stories on you because they don't like you, and that's okay. Because we're shielding you from all of that. Your own character shields you from all of that. The weight on my shoulders grows heavier. A sadness and unease settles in the voice. Why don't you trust that to be true? Why are you more willing to believe in your faults than any hopes of your change and redemption, when you have shown yourself to be so much more the latter than the former? The question lingers in the air. A moment later, the sureness and conviction returns. Listen. No. Meaning well is not always going to mean everything, but it is important. As much as these people try to convince you, it is not. You have a good, albeit hyperactive heart, and a hyperactive is leaving as we speak. There were people who saw you had a good heart before the hyperactive. Not all of them meant well, but some of them did. Those are the ones still here, save one. As many people you felt misunderstood and violated by, there were people who saw you and held you as you were and are, and believed in you and your good intention. They got it the first time around, or if they didn't, they asked you, led with curiosity, listened intently, asked clarifying questions, affirmed you. It is time to hardwire your brain to that. The weight lifts off my shoulders. I go to lower my head and find it lifted instead. I sit up straight. My grip on the tub loosens. My shoulders relax. The tightness that was in them moves to my throat as my eyes glisten over once more. The candle's flame begins to jump. The voices begin to blend together again. There's a brightness to them, an excitement. There has been so much gained, so much worth celebrating. You have done so much work, sacrificed so much, time and time and time again. This year was hard on you. Real, real hard. But them little rose glasses are broken, and that was needed. You're starting to sing things for what they are and always were. And for that, we celebrate. You have no idea what's just beyond the corner. But just know you've made it, baby. You've made it. You figured out what you value. You figured out what you like and don't like, will and won't accept, and are getting better about sticking to those things. And it's about to pay off in ways we can't even describe. It's all for you, baby. It's all for you. A resounding chorus of voices fills the room. We breathe life into you. You are ours. We are of you. We are with you. Remember that. Please remember that. Between sobs, I managed to choke out in, I will. I thank you. I love you. We love you too. So I can do my part. By the time this piece goes live, it would have been 5 months since my heart flare and 4 months since my heart surgery. And now my heart has some new hardware, and my mind is beginning to get on my heart's accord instead of the other way around, to which I had become accustomed. In this piece, I find myself a little more sure, a little more grounded. This space is not to rehash what all those months entailed, for that has already been done. But it is the first and foremost name of gratitude to my lineage, who hold me when I struggle to hold myself, whose grace and care teaches me how to have some for myself, too, who make that corny ass, turn your impossible into I'm possible statement a little less corny. Only a bit, though. I also want to name a continued gratitude for the friends and chosen family who are part of this lineage now, too. In so many ways, I would not be here without y'all. When I began my prayer all those years ago, I did not expect it to play out like this. But many, many lessons and one major heart surgery later, my heart has never been more secure. They've steadied my heart. We've steadied my heart. I've steadied my heart. It is now time for me to do my part.